Is there a difference between women and men?
I think that there are definitions for biological sex.
Okay, so you're not answering that. Let me ask you this question then. Why do women's sports exist? If you can't define a difference between women and men, why not abolish women's sports and just tell little girls to swim with little boys and see who wins?
Oh, I'm simply saying that that sex is
My
different
question,
than gender.
why
and I do believe that
women's
sports have a great
exist?
value. I mean, Senator, I'll tell you right
Ms.
now.
Robinson, please answer the question I'm asking you.
Absolutely.
Why do women's sports exist?
I think that there are so many positive benefits to sports.
But
I mean,
why have
we
a separate
talked about it
category
here
for
today.
women? If there's no difference between women and men, why have women's sports?
What unfolded in this Senate hearing was not just another partisan clash. It was a revealing moment about how deeply divided the country remains over the future of women's sports.
Title IX was a landmark civil rights law. It helped create the incredible breadth of women's sports and girls' sports that we see across the country. I believe in girls' sports. I believe in women's sports. I'm the proud father of 2 daughters who are both athletes. I think participating in competitive sports is a wonderful thing for a young girl. I think it is a wonderful thing for a woman. And I think, unfortunately, today's Democrat Party has decided that women's sports and girls' sports no longer matters, and they're willing to push radical legislation designed to destroy girls' sports and women's sports. Ms. Gaines, I want to thank you for your courage. You are relatively young, but you have demonstrated incredible courage. And because you have dared to speak up, you have been demonized, you have been vilified. I saw when you were attacked by a leftist mob at San Francisco State University for daring to speak up. You had an incredible record as a swimmer at the University of Kentucky. You were a 2-time NCAA All-American. You were a 5-time SEC champion. You're an SEC record holder and a 2-time Olympic trial qualifier. But yet on March 27th, 2022, something changed. What happened on March 17th, 2022?
That's when Thomas and I raced in the 200 freestyle and again resulted in a tie.
And so you tied. What was the consequence of tying?
We went behind the awards podium where typically you're handed your trophy, you're marched out, you're named an All-American. And so we go back there and the official looks at both Thomas and myself and says, "Great job, but you guys tied. And we only have one trophy, therefore we're giving this trophy to Leah." And I question this and I say, why? And at first, I shortened it in my testimony, but really he stumbled on his words. He didn't know how to answer this. And at first he's, well, we're just doing this in chronological order. To which I further pressed, and I said, okay, well, what are you being chronological about? Because we tied. And if we're doing this off alphabetical order, G comes before T, so what are you being chronological about? To which this wasn't a script they had prepared for him. And he actually appreciated his honesty. He did say, we have to give the trophy for Leah because Leah has to have it for pictures. They've made that clear. Leah has to have the trophy for pictures. You can pose with this trophy, but you have to give yours back. You have to go home empty-handed. Leah Thomas takes the trophy home, end of story.
Now, let me ask you, as someone who's competed at the elite level, in your experience, is there a difference between women and men?
Of course. I think we learned this at a very young age, watching even 12 and unders play. Going through puberty causes irreversible advantage, that no matter the training, no matter the diet, no matter any alterable change you can make, will overcome that male advantage, especially in sports like swimming where lung capacity matters so much. Even something as silly as throat size, men have on average a 40% larger throat, which sounds like it's nothing, but when you're grasping for air, that 40% larger throat makes a huge difference in athletic success, not to mention height. You guys know the differences.
Ms. Robinson, do you agree with Ms. Gaines that there's a difference between women and men?
If the question is about trans women...
I'm just asking, is there a difference between women and men?
I mean, what I can say is that the NCAA has rules in place. They've had rules in place for the last decade, and when this competition happened,
I'm going to try again.
The rules were clear.
Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? It's a yes-no question. Do you believe there's a difference?
Oh, I think that we're talking about this case with the NCAA.
No, I'm asking a question. Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? Most people could answer this very simply. I'm curious if you're willing to do so.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just putting it into the context of the conversation that we're having. I think that there are definitions related to sex.
Is that a yes? So I'm trying to get a yes or no. I'm not trying to get a speech. Is there a difference between women and men?
I think that there are definitions for biological sex.
Okay, so you're not answering that. Let me ask you this question then. Why do women's sports exist? If you can't define a difference between women and men, why not abolish women's sports and just tell little girls to swim with little boys and see who wins?
Oh, I'm simply saying that that sex is
My
different
question,
than gender.
why
and I do
do-
believe
why
that
do
women's
women's
sports have a great
exist?
value. I mean, Senator, I'll tell you right
Ms.
now.
Robinson, please answer the question I'm asking you.
Absolutely.
Why do women's sports exist?
I think that there's so many positive benefits to sports.
But
I mean,
why have a
we've talked
separate
about it here
category for
today.
women? If there's no difference between women and men, why to have women's sports?
I'm saying that there's a difference between sex and gender, and that the NCAA has rules in place, which they have for the last decade.
Mr. Chairman,
which
I would
determine
like
that
to enter into
related
the
to
record an
participation.
article from Duke Law called Comparing Athletic Performances for the Best Elite Women to Boys and Men. And it goes through examining in 2017 the top records for women in the world in various track and field events. So, for example, in the 100-meter, the top record for women in the world was 10.71 seconds. Now, that record for the number one woman in the world in 2017 was, in the year 2017, broken by 124 boys under 18. In that same year, the record for the number one competing woman in the 100-meter dash in the world was broken by a total of 2,474 men. If the radical Democrat agenda to destroy girls' sports and women's sports succeeds, little girls will not have a chance to compete. So I ask unanimous consent that this article be entered into the record.
Without objection. Senator Padilla.
Senator Ted Cruz opened his questioning by grounding the issue in history. Title IX, passed in 1972, transformed American sports by guaranteeing girls and women equal access to athletic opportunities. Before that law, women's sports were often an afterthought or didn't exist at all. Today, millions of girls compete because of it. Cruz made clear that for him, this debate is personal, not abstract. He spoke as a father of two daughters, both athletes, and framed his argument around fairness, competition, and opportunity. And if you're finding this breakdown helpful, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future deep dives into major political moments like this. The emotional core of the hearing came when Cruz turned to Riley Gaines, a former elite collegiate swimmer. Gaines was not testifying as a politician or activist, but as someone who competed at the highest level of NCAA athletics. She laid out her credentials carefully: multiple SEC championships, NCAA All-American honors, and Olympic trials qualification. This wasn't about hypotheticals. It was about something that happened to her. Gaines described a specific race in March 2022, the 200-meter freestyle, where she tied with Leah Thomas, a transgender swimmer. On paper, a tie should mean equal recognition, but behind the awards podium, Gaines said officials told her there was only one trophy, and that trophy would go to Thomas. The reason, according to her testimony, was not alphabetical order or race protocol, but optics. Thomas needed the trophy for photos. Gaines could hold it briefly, then return it and leave empty-handed. At that moment, Gaines explained, changed everything, not because she lost, but because she tied and still felt erased. Subscribe to the channel if you want clear explanations of why moments like this matter beyond a single headline. Cruz then shifted the discussion from emotion to biology. He asked what seems like a simple question: is there a physical difference between men and women? Gaines answered directly, pointing to puberty, lung capacity, height, bone structure, and even throat size, all factors that affect performance in swimming and many other sports. Her argument was not ideological, it was physiological. Certain advantages, she said, cannot be trained away. That's where the exchange became tense. Kelly Robinson, representing an advocacy organization, was asked the same yes or no question: is there a difference between men and women? Instead of answering directly, Robinson spoke about NCAA rules, gender versus sex, and existing policies. Cruz repeatedly pressed for a straightforward answer, not a speech, not context, just yes or no. And that hesitation became the moment viewers are now reacting to. Because for many people watching, the question wasn't really about definitions. It was about why women's sports exist at all. If there is no meaningful difference, Cruz argued, then separate categories make no sense. And if there is a difference, then the rules should reflect that reality. If you're appreciating this kind of clear, step-by-step explanation, hit subscribe so you stay informed as these debates continue to unfold. To reinforce his point, Cruz entered a study into the record comparing elite female athletic performances to those of boys and men. The findings are often surprising to people who have never seen the data laid out. World record level performances by adult women are routinely matched or exceeded by teenage boys. In sprinting alone, hundreds of boys under 18 outperformed the fastest woman in the world in a single year. Thousands of men did the same. The argument Cruz was making is not that women are weak, but that women's sports exist precisely because women deserve a protected category where they can compete, excel, and win on equal footing. Supporters of inclusion policies argue that transgender athletes should not be excluded and that existing rules are sufficient. Critics argue that those rules are failing to protect female athletes. What this hearing showed is that the disagreement is no longer just about policy. It's about whether people are willing to acknowledge biological differences out loud. And that is why this moment resonated so widely. This wasn't a viral clip because of shouting or insults. It was viral because of silence, hesitation, and the discomfort of answering a question many people consider obvious. If you want more reporting that slows things down, adds context, and helps you actually understand what's at stake, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. We'll keep breaking down the moments that shape the national conversation without the noise.